Okay, it is Tuesday, November the 17th, 2020, and it is exactly 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And welcome to week 2 of Introduction to Criminal Law. I'm Professor Richard Wright, and I'm going to provide you with details of what's required for week 2 this week. I will start out by saying that please, as I've said before, pay very close attention to what's in the module and what's in the rubric. Very, 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 very important. I've had a few people to reach out to me to ask me about that. I says, read the rubric very carefully and make sure that you follow it. And then also, if you have any questions and you text me, please include the course that you're in and please provide your name. As you know, the assignments for week 1, discussion posts that were due Saturday. Sunday was the date that you had to have them in by because we extended it one day. And then your written assignments that were due on Sunday, we extended them to yesterday, Monday, and I will be putting zeros in where people put it in late, or either when I do grade, I will take away a point, take away 10% based on the situation. In fact, there are no extenuating circumstances that I'm aware of. So let's go ahead and share my screen for this week. Okay, so we come down here and you see your recording. Week 2, all right, is where we are now. This is the link for week 1's. I still haven't had a chance to do that story I told you about. I will be working on that because I've been real busy getting things started for week 1 for you guys. All right, so let's take a look at the course calendar. So that you will be able to see. This is where we are today. Your reading assignment was chapters 3, 4, and 12, and these other items, which I'm going to cover tonight. And then your initial post is due tonight on robbery, burglary, and theft, which I'm going to talk about tonight. And then, of course, the live lecture. And then you have nothing until Saturday with your reply post that is due for robbery and burglary and theft. And then the next day, the 22nd, your written assignment, the identity theft problem. And I will talk about that in just a few minutes, along with your key, along with your phrase that I give you today. Okay, it's right here. Here it is. Here it is, live classroom lecture. And that's on the calendar. Now, once again, I remind you that the course ends on the 18th of December. So next week is going to be the Thanksgiving week, and then the following week you'll have you have 3 more weeks. So the course will be moving right along. Okay. So you see here that next week will be Thanksgiving week, and that I will be grading assignments over the weekend for week 2 rather. Okay. Well, actually, I won't be. Yeah. For week 2, I'll be grading them. Next week. All right. So now let's go and take a look at the module. Oh, before we go to the module, let's go to the announcement. So for this week, we're going to deal with the topic of crimes against property. Crimes against property. And you're going to discover that the sentence that one can receive for crimes against property is not as severe as if you committed a crime against a person, which we'll be covering in Module 3. So for this week, chapters 3, 4, and 12 of the textbook, for which I've previously sent you the PowerPoints. Then we're going to discuss what are the crimes against property: larceny, robbery, burglary, misappropriation, trespassing, vandalism, and then your key terms for practice, and then your property crimes against property, and then the all-important quiz. I will show you what to do to prepare. Again, I remind you, this quiz is very important because it practices you and prepares you for next week, because next week will be at the midterm, basically, for the quiz for week 3. That counts as a grade. Your discussion post, of course, as I said, is due the initial post tonight at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and that your reply post is due Saturday at 11:59 Central Standard, and your written assignment, the identity theft problem. Okay, and it's due now, not Monday, but Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. If you submit your assignments on Monday for this week, then you're going to lose points. Okay, and then adversity to springboard success. Again, I will be providing you with details about what that means in the future. So let's get into the assignments for crimes against property. First of all, discussion about whether or not Debbie committed the 3 crimes: robbery, burglary, or theft. And so you're going to use this scenario here, and then you're going to determine, has Debbie committed the crime of robbery, burglary, or theft? Do you believe that the elements of all 3 crimes have been satisfied? And explain the difference between all 3 crimes and the likelihood of Debbie being convicted of all 3 crimes. That's your initial post. In your reply post, examine another student's post that may contrast with yours and explain why you feel more strongly about yours versus theirs. Now, you remember you have this guide here to help you that you can use for study. All right. I've already said it before. If you click on this, it opens it up. And by the way, if you needed to find cases, it tells you about finding cases and statutes. If you go down to paralegal and you go to fast case and click on this, it opens up a whole lot of information that helps you find cases, statutes, and regulations. There's videos and things to help you as well. So one of my students brought this to my attention. So fast case includes cases, statute, regulations, courtrooms, and constitutions from all 50 states, which is awesome. So you can utilize that source as well. It's under the paralegal tab, but you go to the School of Justice Studies online library and you will find it. This is Dennis Johnson, who is the is a librarian for criminal justice, law enforcement, and you can schedule a chat. Right now he's not on, but you can go through. So that's something that I wanted to share with you. So for your assignments each week, you can utilize this link. Okay. Now let's talk about the written assignment. Now, the written assignment deals with crimes against property, which is larceny, vandalism, burglary, robbery, trespassing, and misappropriation. We're going to elaborate on that in just a few minutes. So you're going to demonstrate in this two-part, it's a two-part paper. Part one, examine the type of crimes that are committed. So you'll look at the scenario and answer these questions that are listed under. Make sure you use citations and references. Make sure you have a cover page, that it is double spaced and not single spaced. It's a minimum of 2 pages, not counting the reference page or the cover page. Very, very important. And you use these fact patterns, but you're going to do some research. Okay? Try not to rely solely on the textbook, people. Don't rely heavily on the textbook. The idea is for you to conduct research. And then the second part is create a flyer. Now there's a template in here that you can utilize to help you be able to and deal with your flyer. Your flyer needs to be original. Don't copy somebody else's flyer, because I'm going to run your papers through Grammarly. And if your percentage is higher than 25%, you're going to lose those points. And then I will be reporting them to the school as well. So you don't want to do that. Okay? And if you're having Grammarly problems, you need to contact a student tutor and make arrangements for tutoring to help you. Okay? Remember, we're APA 7 now. So said don't copy or paste directly from the internet. Make this an original flyer and cite your sources in the appropriate format. All right. And then here's the guide again, back to what I took you to a few minutes ago, where you can find that information. Again, you click on it. There it is. Once again. Okay. So you have it with every assignment as well. You could do it through zip or compress. Compress in the zip file, or either you can attach 2 files. I like the 2 files better. The zip is okay, but I have to do an extra step to grade it. So it's very, very, very important. You know the due date for this, because I'm going to take you now to the rubric. Click on this, tells you the due date, the 22nd, which is Sunday. Your rubric, click on this to open it, and you see the rubric. So, part 1, examine the types of crimes committed, and you'll comply with this section. Spelling and grammar gets you the points there. APA, and then last 15 points. This is a 2-page paper, by the way. Notice there it is right there. You'll lose points for that. Double space, people. And then create a flyer. That's a minimum of 1 page. Make sure that it is original. Make sure that is original, okay? Because I'm going to run them through Grammarly. They should both be Word document. If you look at the bottom, it tells you. It says the name of the field should be completed. And then make sure that it is a Word document. Very, 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 very important. All right. Now, if you go back to the module itself, it tells you exactly, but make sure that it is a Word document. Do not submit your documents as a PDF. All documents should be Word documents. Okay? Those are the assignments. So now let's get into a discussion of the module itself. So what exactly are crimes against property? And we're going to talk about them in detail. And oftentimes people should understand is that those crimes have to do with not hurting individuals, but personal loss. And it says burglary victims often feel violated because they think it'll happen again. Remember, your home and area is private. And you may have insurance to cover it, but there's still the cost of paying deductibles, and also the fact that you should be aware that when claims are made, insurance premiums go up as well for people who are customers. So we're going to talk about the areas of larceny, burglary, robbery, misappropriation, trespassing, and vandalism. Now, you should be aware that what determines what the law is in a particular jurisdiction is based on the statute or the code in the jurisdiction for the crime. All right. So let's start off by talking about larceny. Now, larceny today, you generally don't see that term anymore because it's been replaced by theft, and that it is the unlawful taking of personal property with intent to permanently deprive a person of that property. So when a person commits larceny, now known as theft, the value of the property depends on whether or not an offense is a misdemeanor. And the jurisdictions in each state vary. And if someone, for example, it says in here that in the state of Florida, if someone steals something of value 300 or less, they may be convicted of a misdemeanor. However, if someone steals something greater than a value at 300 or more, they may be convicted of a felony or grand theft. Now, this is an example. If you want to cite Florida, you need to make sure that you look at the current statute to make sure that that's up to date. One of my students has already caught that. And so what I try to explain to students is that remember that these modules are written and that the law is ever evolving, and that we in the legal profession, lawyers and paralegals, know that there is a system that we must utilize called shepherdizing to bring cases up to date and statutes to make sure that we have the most recent laws that are on the books that are available. So that has changed. But here's my whole point in a nutshell, is that the amount for grand theft is over a certain amount, and under a certain amount is a misdemeanor. With a misdemeanor, you receive up to a year. With a felony, more than a year. Okay. So there are various kinds of theft that take place. Identity theft, we're going to talk about that. Retail theft, auto theft, theft of telecommunication. What is theft of telecommunication? That's taking and utilizing the cable improperly, or utilizing the internet improperly, misappropriation without paying for it, or utilizing a system that has become legal. Okay. So one of the largest objects that involve in theft is the automobile. And automobile thefts take place quite frequently all over the country. And sometimes those automobiles are never found because, as it says here, that they end up in what we call chop shops, where they are sold for parts all over the world. And That's one of the markets that's out here. And so auto thieves have several ways that they can take a vehicle. They can take a vehicle and drive it and do what they call joyriding, which we're going to talk about in a minute, where they don't intend to permanently deprive the person of the vehicle. Or you can have a person who commits vehicle theft. If you rent a car, for example, and you're supposed to have it back by a certain time, and you haven't made contact with the rental company, technically they can file a criminal complaint against you, which most of the time they don't. They usually try to extend the time, and they will generally charge you. But technically, they could do that. Okay. So vehicle theft is right here, and that's the most common form of larceny of cars, where someone takes a vehicle and you see how they break in. Now, they got different ways of breaking in now, because a lot of cars don't have these kind of locks like mine don't. But intentionally operating or driving without the consent of the vehicle of another. And it varies according to the various jurisdictions, but these are the key elements. Intentionally operating or driving without consent the vehicle of another person. Now, notice that what is happening here is that the idea is to take the car and never to return it, or never to put it in a place where the person can possibly get it back. But on the other hand, joyriding is something that oftentimes happens with maybe a kid or someone very young. When they take the vehicle but don't intend to keep it permanently, they'll utilize it, and so usually that's a misdemeanor offense. If it's returned within, as they say in Ohio, 48 hours, it's a misdemeanor, not a felony. But remember, in those cases, the lack of intent to deprive the owner of the vehicle, the longer that period exists, the more likely you're going to head towards a vehicle theft. Carjacking is taking the vehicle by force from an individual. Like you see this person with the gun walking up and forcing the individual to turn over a car. Also, if in Illinois, for example, the Illinois vehicular statute relating to carjacking, because there have been so many carjackings across the country, states have a specific statute relating to hijacking. Vehicular hijacking, as it's referred to, is carjacking, and prohibits a person from knowingly taking a motor vehicle from the person or the immediate presence by the use of force. So let's say, for example, if you pumping your gas, or you get out of your car and you do something crazy like leave your car running or leave your keys in there, and while you run inside, that is when someone comes in and takes the vehicle, and it is a felony in all states. Carjacking is, because of the potential for injury to people. Okay, so that's what we talk about theft or larceny. Now let's talk about robbery or burglary. Now, let me help you guys out with something that you may or may not know, is that let's talk about burglary first. Burglary is the breaking and entering of the dwelling of another with the intent to steal or commit another crime, such as vandalism or arson. Now, at common law, that was before statutes, burglary was the intent limited to the home, and it had to occur at nighttime. There is no more nighttime requirement. That is why burglars wear black most of the time, is because of the fact that that was the traditional thing. They would blend in with the nighttime. But burglary now, under the law and in most statutes and jurisdictions, can occur in a house, a vehicle, a business, and other ways as well. Now, here's the question that I want to share with you about burglary. Now, if an individual, for example, reaches into an open window and takes something that is inside the house, and they don't go in themselves, but they use a stick or a rod or anything, or they reach their hand in, that's not theft, that's burglary, because it's considered as breaking and entering. So I'll let you know that, and you can consider that for your assignments for this week. Burglary does not mean that you have to climb through the window, break the window, come through the doors, and those kind of things. All right. And we're going to talk about the difference between burglary and home invasion. Next, we come to robbery. Now, we've already talked about theft. So now we're talking about robbery. It is the unlawful taking, just like with theft, with the intent to permanently deprive the individual. But the element of force or intimidation or threat of violence must be included in that. That's what turns it into armed robbery, or that's what turns it into robbery. So robbery is defined as the unlawful taking of another with property of another. However, two or more elements. The taking must be from a person, not picking it up, and done by force. That makes it robbery. Doesn't have to be with a weapon. It could be with a threat or intimidation from the person, not sitting down. That's theft, but from a person, or that could be burglary if you're reaching in to a window. Now, let me show you the different kinds of robbery. So here's armed robbery. Armed robbery is just what it says, utilizing a weapon. Okay? It could be any kind of weapon that you facilitate, and that's called armed robbery. Okay? And in many jurisdictions, it carries more time because you're threatening the life of an individual. Robbery already is serious because you're taken from the person by force, something, or a threat. Strong arm robbery is when you do what they're showing this picture, like grab something from someone, take their wallet, their purse, not pick their pockets, but snatch it from them, snatch something out of the hand of a person. Those kinds of things will be what we call strong arm robbery. Weapon is not displayed, but force is used. Okay, and that's the thing that makes it strong arm robbery. Home invasion. Now, some people think that it's just burglary, but no, it's more than burglary. It involves the violence or threat of violence that occurs. So similar to burglary during a home invasion robbery, an offender can enter the dwelling of another, not with their consent, and uses force to commit robbery of the occupants in the property. And the state of Florida lists, for example, as elements: intentional, entering the dwelling of another without consent, and commits robbery of the occupants. That's home invasion. Okay, so there has to be some force or something like that. That's it, okay? And you can take a look at some of these down here by this link here. But I've already given you a clear explanation of the differences between them. Now, when we start talking about misappropriation, it means that someone had property and was legally in the possession of someone, like a person who worked for that person, a person who was in a place of trust, such as working in a bank or a store or working as an accountant, a lawyer, or someone who takes the funds and uses for personal gain. And embezzlement is one of the common things: fraud, forgery, welfare fraud, identity theft, and credit card crimes. We're going to talk about them one by one very briefly. Embezzlement, when a person uses somebody else's money that they've been entrusted with. For example, if you are the trustee over a person's money or the guardian over their money, and you convert it to your own personal use but don't use it for the benefit of that individual, you could be guilty of embezzlement. Embezzlement on a higher level occurs in the example that's given here, where it says Mike, a purchasing manager for a large hotel. He generates invoices for food and beverages for the hotel. He comes up with a scheme and creates phony invoices delivering liquor to the hotel. Mike takes those invoices under the name of fictitious business that has never been purchased. So he has the checks mailed to a P.O. box, cashes them at a bank. Well, it's determined that he diverted the funds and that he really was benefiting himself. So he's made makes a lot of money, and he took advantage of the position that he was operating in the hotel and misused the monies that were entrusted to him. Fraud such as forgery, welfare fraud, identity theft, and credit card theft. Fraud can exist by obtaining profit by deceit or deception, and by trickery, such as defrauding a hotel without paying, so leaving without paying. Same thing at a restaurant, what they call dashing, and leaving without paying, getting out of a taxi cab and jumping out and not paying, and so those kinds of things. And mere flight from the victim without paying is fraud. Fraud can also be committed other ways. For example, if an offender, as it says, unusually uses the name and social security of someone else, that's fraud. So that's identity theft as well. Okay, so forgery, more specific, is when you alter a writing. Let's say a check is written to you for $10 and you put an extra zero in there and you're able to cash it. Now, there should be some protections for that where the words are written in, but the key thing is that forgery can be something that you can sign somebody else's name to something that really is not you, purporting to be that person. And it can be, for example, obtaining prescriptions by forging a doctor's signature on the medication. That's forgery. The key thing is altering the document for personal gain. Welfare fraud is just what it says, misrepresenting your need. You may be working a job, making good money, yet you still apply for link or food stamps, or you apply for renter's assistance or energy assistance, something where you misrepresent your income to be able to do so. That's what we mean by welfare fraud. Identity theft is huge in our time because of the fact that now we have technology, we have computers, and people utilize electronic devices to utilize and take the identity of people. I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. My wife and I went to a restaurant in the area near where we live, and I used my credit card or a debit card in that case to pay for what I did. And so I gave it to the waiter. The waiter took it and brought it back. Okay, so a few days later, we discover and find out from my bank that there was charges in another jurisdiction utilizing my credit card. And the bank asked me, did I have my credit card out of my possession? And I told them no, except when I, normally you give it to a waiter or waitress to slide it. Now you notice what's happening. More and more restaurants now are having at table to do it. So now they're trying to minimize that. But what happened in this occasion is that there was large amounts of items purchased, and my bank, while they conducted an investigation, put back the money on my card, which was about nearly $3 grand. Well, they discovered that what happened is that that person who was the waiter at the restaurant, which I had entirely forgot until they brought it to my attention, not only did he take the card and take my charge, but he had a pocket scanner, little sliding thing, and he ran it through there and put it in a pocket, like a jump drive almost, and he put it in the computer, sent that information to another jurisdiction. Ohio was the exact place, and that's where they used it. Well, it turned out that weekend that there was a ring that was doing that. So I'm showing you how very simply it can happen. You can utilize your debit card in places, and there are places who will not only utilize it for that, but they will charge other things as well. And so what they do is they take your information, your social security number, your driver's license number, and all of that, places of employment and all those things, bank account stuff, and they transfer it to their names. You have to watch out with spam or email that comes out to you, because the fact that there is a very real possibility that those kind of things can happen. And so they happen in a whole number of ways. And so it's such a very serious problem and such a wide issue that law enforcement agencies, you should report the information as soon as possible. And so the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, provides information to tell you about how you need to be careful. I remember an instance where I thought it was one of my colleagues from the college who sent me an email through my college email inviting me to apply for a secret shopper position. And so anyway, I sent the email back to reply back to the person, and here's what happened. They sent me some checks and told me to take these checks, put into my bank account, keep $450. It was about $1,800 or $2,000, and that I was to buy some Walmart gift cards and provide them with the numbers on these Walmart gift cards. Well, it was a scheme, but my colleague didn't do it. I would find out later that my colleague's Rasmussen account had been hacked, and that when I replied back, I wasn't replying back to her. I was really replying back to them. And so once I got the information that they mailed to me, and then I started, they started sending me messages telling me I needed to cash these right away. I knew it was an issue anyway, and so then I reported it to the postal inspectors because they used the mails. I also reported it to the Federal Trade Commission and the FBI. And so, and then I contacted my local police department. But it's here. I remember one other instance I'll tell you about. I remember when I moved from a house in 2011, and in 2000 and I believe it was 18. Yes, 2018. I decided to try to get a cell phone for my daughter from AT&T. Well, I had already had AT&T Uverse in the place I was living for several years. And so when I got ready to apply, they said, no, you owe us money for a cell phone. I says, I have a cell phone, but it's with Verizon. And so anyway, I said, I don't have an AT&T phone. Well, they pulled up the information and said, did I live at such and such a place? I said, yeah, but I haven't lived there since 2011. And so put in a claim for it. It took them almost 3 months before they finally fully investigated and determined that what happened is that, you know how you'll get mail sent to you at where someone used to live and now you live there? Well, apparently someone got that mail that with my name on it, and they filled it out and had stuff delivered there. And when it was delivered there, they got it off of the porch of the house. It wasn't the people that bought the house. It was somebody else. And so they got it, and they got the phones, got them set up, and they ended up being able to use it until they finally decided not to pay, obviously. And then I got, the bill was on me. Now, it wasn't on my credit. It wasn't on my credit because it hadn't gotten that far. But the point of the matter is, I'm just showing you how identity theft can work so easily. The final thing I want to talk about is credit card fraud. Stealing credit card offers. So when you get these little offers in the mail about credit cards, shred them before you throw them away, because someone can get them and fill them out and they can apply for a credit card. And never, ever put your PIN information for your debit card or credit cards with the cards. And so there are also some schemes now that they have these fake things that they can put on gas pumps where you can cover actually where you put your credit card, and it actually captures the information of your credit card, and the scammers come and take it off, and they use it the same way as I was talking about earlier with the jump drive. So there's all kinds of things. Cameras and everything. So you have to be really, really careful. You have that same issue at ATMs as well. So you have to be very, very aware of these crimes that are taking place and that are on the rise. So now let's talk about trespassing and vandalism. That's the last thing that we're going to talk about, is when a person, has a sign up saying no trespassers, that's one of the requirements. And there must be a notice to the individuals not to enter onto the property. And it must be posted letting people know that that's the case. And it is important that people understand that that is a violation of the law. Now, it says in this last paragraph, it's not typically necessary that a person knowingly trespass into a restricted area. For example, if a person is intoxicated and enters the residence of another and falls asleep on the couch, the unintentional act is still trespassing. On the other hand, the intoxicated person didn't commit burglary because he had an intent to steal or commit a crime while inside the residence. In this case, trespassing would be the more appropriate charge. So it can be done unintentionally as well. Vandalism is just intentionally damaging the property of another without their consent. And that's it. That's it. There are charges that are filed called criminal damage to property, and almost every jurisdiction has that as a misdemeanor, and that you can be charged with this. When, for example, a hit and run person, that can fit that situation where they damage your car or vehicle and, don't report it or let you know. So there are a lot of elements that we've talked about today, keeping in mind that the key thing that takes place is that it involves property. And when you get to the more serious offenses where like carjacking or like robbery or like in home invasion, where individuals' lives are possibly in jeopardy, then you have the most serious of offenses. Okay? And so before I adjourn, I'm going to show you again how these things work, these key terms. So you click on the key terms. Use the flashcards because that's the one that works best. Run Adobe Flash. And when you run it, there it goes. Okay, now you have these questions. Similar to armed robbery, except the act or robbery is committed without a weapon. Rather, the robbery is committed by physical force. So that's called, let's go back. Let's flip the card over. And it's called strong armed robbery. And you go through each of these and check that, okay? So I'm going to leave that and you go through those. Then you go to the next section. Practice for which crime against property, what crime is involved. That is a property crime, and you start the activity. A 17-year-old is walking home from high school. He's approached by two suspects. They shove him onto the ground and take his wallet. What type of crime is this? Is it armed robbery? Is it burglary? Is it theft? It's strong armed robbery because of the physical force. So you do the same thing with, there's 9 more questions. And you go through that. I encourage you to do it. And then the last important thing is the quiz. Now, it tells you this activity will help you prepare for your graded quiz, as do these activities too as well. But I can tell you already that in this practice quiz are some of the exact questions that may have some slight variations that you will find when you do the quiz coming up in week 3. The unlawful entry into the dwelling of another without consent with the intent to commit robbery is known as, is it burglary? Some people might think that. It's actually this. Threat or of violence, okay? And so you do the same thing with each of these, okay? So we are done. I've given you everything that you need for this week, and it's important for me to give you now a key phrase or a word. And the key phrase or word that I want to give you this week is property crimes. That's it. So give me that and you get your points. All right, with that, I'm going to say good night. Have a good week. Reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. I'll see you next Tuesday at the same time for week number 3's lecture. So I'm going to say good night to you. Stay safe out there.